Welcome to the Nonsense in the Chaos. This week's episode is special. I managed to capture the life story of a fellow who I've known since I was 10 years old and has been a huge inspiration. And we know each other. He knows everyone. So I didn't know him that well. I have been involved in the Melfords, which is a mum's troupe that existed before the Suffolk Howlers, which is the one that I'm involved in. It existed well before us and was our inspiration. They were an older group of people, and I did go to some rehearsals with them. And so I spent a bit of time with Jack in rehearsals, working on different plays. And it was his script that we have been touring and that I have been performing for some nearly 20 years now. So this is the story of George and the Dragon, or St. George and his many enemies. And he talks about this in the conversation that I have with him, so you'll get to hear him talk about it. But I've performed it so many times. It was performed at my wedding, and it's been performed all up and down the country. When I've been on my pilgrimages, I've walked and performed it. I've taught it to children at Sark School. I've taught it to several different companies that I've worked with. And every time we do performances of it, I always add to the title. So it says written by Mad Jack and I think it says 1991 or something like that. And then each time I go, butchered by the Suffolk Howlers for 15 years, well performed by the Sark school children in 2023. So like each year I add to it, I add to the script. So it's got a history and a timeline to it in terms of where I've gone off with it and gone on a journey. So he's a very special person to me. He's a special person to, I think, everyone who works at Currell Hall. And he's just a unique human being. So it was a privilege to have this conversation with him. We got bombarded sort of a third of the way in by a group of youths who were cross-dressing and having a bit of a party, and they descended on us, and they didn't know we were recording, but it meant that we had to move. So just to explain, that's what's happening. And then we moved to a quieter location. But it was meant to just be a little bit of a 10-minute chat that I was going to add into last week's podcast where I was interviewing people from Kentwell. But then as he unfolded his whole life story to me, I thought, oh, this is a rare opportunity and an absolute gift. So I'm honoured to have been shared this story and that I'm able to share it with you. And so, yeah, what an exciting and amazing opportunity this has been. So this is the life story of Peter Currell Brown, aka Mad Jack from Kentwell Hall. What an absolute privilege, and I hope you enjoy the show. What's been your favourite thing that you've ever done at Kentwell?
The greatest piece of reenactment creation which I did here is the Foundry. Mm-hmm. The Foundry was a stunning piece of recreation, absolutely.
What was the best thing you made in the Foundry?
We made cauldrons. We cast cauldrons.
Yeah.
But we did it on the proper scale, where you don't put a crucible in the hearth. You use the hearth itself as a crucible, and you melt a pool of molten bronze in the hearth, and then you tap it from below, and it pours out in a stream into the mould.
Wow.
So you're not lifting out crucibles and things. Well, you're making them out twice as much as you could want to lift in a crucible, in order to cast a whole cauldron.
Yeah. And you did it from scratch, didn't you? You made the whole thing from scratch.
Yes.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Designed the bellows and the hearth and everything.
Because also there was your Da Vinci flying machine, the helicopter. Yeah. That was really amazing.
Yes. I've done, Anot made me total up all the things I've done here, different ones, because I've got a grasshopper mind and I like to do something one year and then do something else.
Yeah. I remember you doing the dentist. The dentistry was brilliant. And looking for the Holy Grail.
Oh, no, I don't remember that.
You did a deep sea diving thing that you were looking under the lighthouse. Yes. With Absalom.
That was Absalom.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I always do it with somebody else.
Yeah.
Like Ant was the person who helped me do the flying machine. And then Ant and I made the big clock. We made a big clock.
Yeah, that was really good as well.
Demonstrate the action of the verge escapement.
Yeah.
The clock never kept good time.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the point. It was to to recreate the action of a verge escapement.
And what's that? The movement of the... What's that? What's the verge?
That's one of the first clock escapements. You know what I mean by an escapement?
No, what's that?
It's the mechanism which governs the rate at which the hands go round.
Oh, okay, right.
And the verge escapement is a T-shaped thing. It's a spindle with a cross piece and weights on the end. And as it does that, there are little, forget what they're called, on the spindle that engage with the crown wheel and let it go 1 tooth at a time. Anna made me write down all the things I've done, and it came to 25, but there are a lot of other different things as well.
Yeah.
Since then that I've done, because I like to do. I've been coming here for about 35 years.
Yeah.
And I like to do something different every year.
Yeah. I have a video of you doing The Alchemist, the first year you did The Alchemist, and you're pouring mercury into a bowl with a nail in it and showing the nail floating on the surface. And I've got that on VHS.
Oh, good.
From the first year that I came. So I think I came 35 years ago as well. But I was little. I nearly drowned. I nearly drowned in the fish pond.
Oh, wow.
When I was 11. I was 11.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and Sam, the basket, is when the basket makers were next to the fish pond.
Fished you out, did
he? A punter fished me out.
Oh.
Yeah, a visitor fished me out.
And, so we're lucky to have you there.
Yeah, well, it was a bit of a mega thing. But I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, it changed my life. I was a little Essex girl, and I came here and then nearly drowned, and then fell in love with it. I was like, I'm coming back.
You had a Damascus transformation.
Yeah.
Perhaps we could go somewhere else.
Yeah, we can wander over here. Should we wander this way?
I could go to the cot, for instance.
Let's do that. Yeah.
It's not raining, is it?
No, it's not raining. The youth are having a party. What do you do, like, normally with your life?
I'll have to tell you my life story.
Yeah, I'd like to know it.
Take a long time. No, I started as a teenager. My first job was an apprentice toolmaker.
Okay.
In a factory. And
are you local? Are you East Anglian?
Yeah, I was in Colchester.
Oh, cool.
I grew up in Colchester.
Yeah, I'm from Braintree.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, Rain Foundry was at Braintree.
Oh, yeah.
It's closed down now.
Yeah.
Which is such a shame.
Yeah.
Are we still recording?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Where should we go? Don't mind wherever you want to go.
Yeah, let's go.
You can swear if you want. You're allowed to swear. And you've done kind of a lot of sort of with like TV type things, haven't you? But is it you making things and doing things?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a light in there?
I think there is, so people might be in there.
Let's hope. Oh, don't say they're all going ha 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 in there. Where should we be driven to?
Well, we could sit maybe in the Sotlers where they make the food,
or in here.
Yeah. Oh, should we just sit here on the?
The Sutlers might be more agreeable.
Yeah, let's do that. Amazing. And the Melfords as well. I did come to a rehearsal with the Melfords once.
Did you?
Yeah, because I've been doing George and the Dragon.
Oh, right.
I've been performing your version of George and the Dragon for 15, 20 years, yeah. So we've performed it. I've been married twice, and it was performed at my first wedding. And I walked the Michael and Mary ley line from Land's End to the Norfolk coast.
Really?
Performing George and the Dragon, your version of it.
What, with a group?
With a group, yeah. 7 of us.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it was really good fun. I've done it twice. I did it in 2020 and I did it in 2022.
Yes, that Mama's Play is the result of, I've got, see, do you know about the Mama's Play?
Tell me about it.
It was, the origin of it is a mystery. Nobody knows, but it was a play which was spread all around the country and performed in every village. And every village is slightly different, but there's a basic structure which must have been the original structure, you know. And people like vicars, Victorian vicars, and people would sort of collect it before it died out, and people like Cecil Sharp and so on. And so there are versions known that come from all different parts of the country, and I got them all together, and I've got a big box file that thick of anyone who's doing research on. It's called folk drama.
Yes, right, yeah.
And about the Mummers Play, but a box file that thick of various documents. And I sort of shoved them all together and got the best from each one, and shoved them together for our Mummers Play. You know?
Amazing.
So it's, I mean, ours has got a dragon in it, but a lot don't have a dragon. You know? And ours has got Beelzebub in it, and some don't have Beelzebub, and so on. So we've got
some have Father Christmas, but we don't have Father Christmas.
That's right, yeah.
And Random Tom with the sack of people on his family on his back.
That's Jolly Jack. With Random Tom is the guy at the back, you know. And Father Christmas took his place. And of course that was at the Restoration, you see.
Oh, okay.
And then there was Boney Pert was one of the baddies, so that's Bonaparte.
Oh, right. I hadn't put that together.
There are all sorts of different characters that I've left out.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. We performed it at my second wedding recently, and there was a guy there watching who had never seen anything like that before, and he said, I don't normally watch theatre, I find it really uncomfortable. He's from Manchester. And he said, but I couldn't stop watching it. And he pulled me aside and he said, can you explain what that was? I couldn't, it was mesmerising. And I said, well, it's our folk theatre and it doesn't make sense. It's not really meant to, but it's from our roots. Like it speaks to something really deep within us.
Well, it's about death and resurrection. Which, you know, is a Christian idea, but it's also about summer coming after winter.
I ended up reading quite a lot into it because I've been doing it for so many years. So I see St. Michael pointing with his spear at the dragon, and the dragon often in the St. Michael depictions has a human face. And so the way I see it is that
the dragon has a human face.
In quite a lot of the stained glass windows and paintings of St. Michael, the dragon has a human face. And he's not actually killing the dragon, he's pointing at it with a spear. But then you'll have it alongside a stained glass window of St. George slaying the dragon. And I see the dragon as being connected through the Chinese dragon lines and song lines and such like, as being of the land, like the dragon energy is the land energy. And so we're denying our like natural state and our like animal state and putting on this shiny knight in shiny armor that we're putting out into the world. And if we do that and we ignore our kind of ugly inner twin, then we start perceiving evil in the world, which is Beelzebub. And then we start perceiving evil in the feminine, which is Mary Tinker. And then the Saracen Knight, who's the Muslim, who then slays us. And then a herbalist quack doctor Lefty brings us back to life again. And we're all right for a bit. And then the whole cycle starts again. And it's the story of England.
That's a bit what I call Glastonbury thinking.
Yes, it is. I'm definitely a bit of a Glastonbury thinker.
I used to live at Glastonbury.
Oh, did you?
Years,
Did you?
I would still be there, except I inherited my father's house.
Right.
And I couldn't afford a house at Glastonbury.
What drew you to go live there?
Sorry?
What made you live in Glastonbury?
Why did I go there? Oh, that's an interesting thought. Where was I before it? I was in Bristol.
And was it like, when was it? What era was it?
After 1980. It was after 1980. Now, do you know, I can't think what took me there. I must have gone there for a particular reason.
What did you find it like living there? Because I've always thought it seems quite a crazy, energetically crazy place to live.
It's a wonderful place. I would still be there because I love it. All my friends and mates were there. because there's loads of people who are middle-aged now, but in their youth they took a lot of acid, and it's altered their mind, their thinking. You get a way of thinking I call Glastonbury thinking.
I may have taken some acid in my time.
Yeah, that's right. I can hear Glastonbury thinking quite often.
Yeah.
The sort of people are there. For instance, when I was there was a society of immortalists.
Oh, wow.
Who believed that if they got together and had the right set of mind, they would live forever and never die.
Yeah, yeah.
And they had regular meetings.
Are they still alive?
I don't know. And then there was the channelers,
right?
Who believed that they they channeled some kind of wisdom from space.
Right. Okay.
And they were channeling it, messages.
Yeah.
From outer space, and that was those people.
Yeah.
And then there are the people that believed in the magic of stones. Not the magic, but because magic is something you don't believe in. But they believed the curing properties of
like
various minerals and stones.
Yeah, yeah. So you a scientist, mind you'd say? You were a scientist.
Well, I was a total skeptic.
Yeah.
But I loved all these people because that was Glastonbury.
Yeah, yeah,
that was Glastonbury. And there were hippies, for instance, that started really successful businesses.
Yeah.
For instance, there's a huge whole food company, I can't remember the name of them, that started just as a hippie.
Yeah, yeah. Infinity Foods. Infinity Foods is one that's in Brighton.
Well, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That they, a couple of hippies got together and said, let's buy whole food in bulk and supply it to our friends, and it got bigger and bigger until they were a big whole food company. And Margaret, somebody, used to travel about in the East and buy up stuff and bring it back and sell it. And then she had a shop with all these amazing. One of her items came to the Magic Weekend. Were you at the Magic Weekend?
No, I've not been to the Magic Weekend. Oh. Is it good?
I don't know. I didn't go.
You didn't go.
But Anot, my friend, was very keen on it.
Yeah.
And she wanted to be a sort of witch with a whole collection of weird things.
Yeah.
So I made her the Philosopher's Stone in a box, and let her take this mask, this amazing tribal mask thing she took with her.
Oh, because we were saying we thought you had the Philosopher's Stone because you've always seemed to be the same age the whole time we've known you. Because we've been coming 35 years and you've always been.
Everyone says that.
The same age.
When I was about 35, I was told I looked 100. But when my second year, I was alchemist.
Yeah.
And there were 3 of us, and we all had long beards. And people said, does you have to have a long beard to be an alchemist? And that was a 3-week event in those days.
Yeah.
And the last weekend, the other 2, I didn't have the courage to do it. They shaved off their beards, and then they went round with a little flask saying, we found the elixir of eternal youth. And because if you shave your beard off, you look 10 years younger.
Yeah, totally. That's hilarious.
And the women, who'd known us, were saying, what? Oh, look. And his wife, one of them's wife said, that's the man I married, she said.
That's brilliant.
And I didn't have the courage to do it. It was a shame. That alchemist, I don't know what I did next year, but I've written a whole list of things that I did, and I got to 25 and sort of gave up.
That's so good, though. They've always been amazing. We've all loved everything you do.
There's an Armada year, because it was 1988, you see.
Yeah.
Armada, you would have 3 Armada years. But I think it was that year I made a great big machine, like a giant bow, for throwing fireballs at the Spanish ships. And we were throwing fireballs about and not quite going where we wanted them to go.
Yeah, it's been great there not being health and safety.
We do. If Patrick's insurance knew what we went on here, they'd double the insurance. Double the.
If you enjoy this podcast, please consider supporting me by signing up to a monthly subscription at Patreon/Jolie Rose, JolieRose. I put this work out for free, this podcast. I also do fortnightly moon ceremonies online with a Zoom link that anyone can join. I do video blogs on YouTube, and then also this podcast, which is also available for free. So all this free content I'm putting out into the world so that anyone can enjoy it. But if you do have the finances to be able to support me for this work, then I would hugely appreciate it, because this is the only way I have thought of to be able to sustain a living as an artist whilst living on my tiny little crazy island of Sark in the Channel Islands, where there's just 500 people. We have access to the internet. We don't have access to many humans. And so it's hard for me to create work that will get big enough audiences for me to be able to make a living, but I can do it online. So all of this content I'm putting out for free, but if you're able to subscribe for a small fee each month, like £2 or £3, as if we're meeting up for a coffee, something like that, then that means that I'm able to continue doing this work and it financially supports me. There is also an option to pay a little bit more and you get extra free content if you do this, which would also be greatly appreciated. If you can't though, then that's not a problem. The best thing you could do to support me if you're unable to do it financially is to like and subscribe and follow the podcast and all my video blogs on YouTube, and to leave comments and share on social media and let people know about them. If you enjoy my podcast, then hopefully other people will too, and people you know may well do too. So please share far and wide, and people who can afford to support me financially are therefore covering you getting a free podcast. And it's just a generosity, circular system that just feels like it's a really lovely way of making work and putting it out there that's based on kindness and inclusivity. It means everybody gets to enjoy a podcast. So if you are able to help, that would be amazing. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy this week's podcast. On with the show. Yeah, go on. What's your life story? Tell us. Are you at Colchester?
I was at Colchester, and as I didn't do sixth form. I left school, I don't know, 16, and got a tool making apprenticeship. The tool makers are the top shop floor workers. Make all the machine tools that are used in all the machines. And it's a real craft. And I was really proud of it. You know, I did 6 years apprentice, 5 years actually on the shop floor, learning to process metal. And I was really proud of it. But on the other hand, I disliked factory life completely. So I'm cutting corners here. What did I do then? When I finished my apprenticeship, I left home because it seemed to me that I wasn't an adult until I'd left my parents' home. So I built a canoe and went embarked on a tour of Britain via canals.
Oh, wow.
In this canoe. And it was a wonderful adventure. I met some wonderful people. I ended up the River Severn at Bridgnorth because I was interested in communes. Used to call them communities then. And there was a big commune called the Bruderhof near Bridgnorth, and I went there to sample it. You know, they had people come along who wanted to come along. And I fitted in immediately because in those days, most farm gates were made of because it was a rural commune.
Mm.
Most farm gates were made of wood, like normal farm gates,
Mhm.
but tubular steel farm gates had just come in, and they had a workshop, a thriving workshop business making tubular steel farm gates, and I instantly fitted in there, you see, because I'm a metal worker.
Yeah.
Which was nice, but it was an extreme Christian culture,
Mm-hmm.
and I disliked it very much. But the idea of the community was great. No money ever exchanged hands. You just went to the store and asked for what you needed and got it, and and fed every day and so on. But it was very strongly Christian, and so I left that for a chap who advertised in an alternative newspaper for people to join a commune on the west coast of Wales.
Mm-hmm.
And Arthur Darlington had a small holding, like a large small holding or a small farm. And I turned up there, and the commune turned out to be just me, Arthur, and the dog. But we gave it away because I could see to all these rackety farm machinery, you see, these old rackety farm machinery, and we went on for a year or so and more. But he was Quaker, and he said, "What we need here is a Quaker work camp." So he, on the grapevine, he put out the wanted the Quaker work camp here, and two girls turned up. Well, he and I hadn't seen young women for about a year and a half. And it turned out that not immediately, but it turned out after a few years that I married one and he married the other one.
Oh, wow.
Two Quaker girls. Anyway, I left Arthur because there was a guy in Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales who had a property to spare, and he put it about that he would like it to be inhabited by a community, and free, just to use it to form a community. And so there were a whole bunch of us, including Mary, who was the girl I married, and me and a few others. We went and formed a commune in the middle of Merthyr Tydfil. And Vivian Worthington, who was a male, was a sort of business type, and we put over the idea of democratic business. That is, that everybody in the business from top to bottom is paid the same and valued the same. And at that time, fiberglass was a new thing. And we set up a factory producing glass fiber clear corrugated sheet.
Oh, yeah, right.
By hand. Because it's quite a new thing. And we shared it. Sometimes one person was the managing director and another one of us was company secretary, and then we'd dodge about and change it around. We never made much money for ourselves, but we set up this business as democratic business, and we were encouraged by a big firm called Scott Barder, who had the same ideas, but they were a chemical company that made our resins, our synthetic resins. And so they encouraged us and gave us advice, and we did very well, actually. But we never grew, because one conflict in communes, in the community movement, is that some form a community because they want to separate themselves from society and live the righteous life, live the just life separate from society. And the other thread in commune thinking is that the community is set up in order to do service to the surrounding community.
Yeah, right.
And so half of our members wanted to be kind of monastic, and the other half, we wanted to do things for the community. For instance, they wanted a youth club. So we set up and ran a youth club.
Mhm.
We were completely in no training, you know, but there was this hall, and we opened it and got table tennis and had a youth club, you know.
Yeah.
But the other half of the community wasn't interested in that. You see, they were interested in being separate and living a good life. Now, then, have you heard of the Aldermaston marches?
No.
My God, you're so young, aren't you? The Aldermaston marches were just the biggest thing happening politically.
Oh, right. Wow. No, I've totally not heard of them.
They were anti-nuclear weapon marches.
Okay.
Yeah,
The CND symbol.
we were nicknamed Ban the Bomb.
Yes, right.
CND
Yeah,
symbol.
yeah.
And there were that we heard on that there were these marches. They marched from London to the nuclear weapons research place at Aldermaston. Thousands of people, thousands and thousands. And half of our communes said, well, we've got to go and join them, you know. And the other half said no. So we all went off and joined the march. And that was a big thing. And then we didn't go back to Merthyr Tydfil. We went on to do other things. And so it went on. But you can look me up on Wikipedia.
Are you? Are you on Wikipedia?
Yeah.
Are you really?
It's only half the story on Wikipedia, and I have no idea who put it on.
Really? So what? And then, because I was really interested in communal life as well.
Yeah.
And the same thing was what I thought about it as well. That if it's built on ideals, then it doesn't last. And I mean, the best you could hope for is it will last a generation, but the children are going to rebel against whatever the ideal is.
That was interesting about the Broederhof, you see. That was a big and successful. I mean, there were several hundred people in the Broederhof. And the young people, I mean, talking about young, older teenagers, had never handled money.
Wow.
And there were expeditions outside, you know, because they had vehicles. They'd jump in a car and go off to local stores, you know, to get stuff. Although most of their food, for instance, they attempt to grow for themselves, want to be self-sufficient. But there were all sorts of things like paint and so on that they were, and the teenagers would go out on these expeditions into the outside world, but then they'd come back again, you know, and they were intrigued talking to us, you know, what's the outside world like, and you could see that they were itching to get out there.
Exactly,
and possibly never come back.
Yeah.
You know?
I now live in Sark in the Channel Islands, so I live on a tiny community of 500 people.
What, you live in Sark?
Yeah, I live in Sark, yeah.
Good heavens.
I'm in the government there.
You're in the
government.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we've got for a tiny little island.
Where is it?
Next to Guernsey.
Ah, right.
Yeah, so down by France.
There's Jersey and Guernsey.
Yeah, and Alderney.
And Sark is a bit of it.
Yeah, but we've got our own separate government.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
How many people?
500.
Any cars?
No.
No cars?
No cars. Yeah. Oh, it's really cool.
Lots of cycles.
Yeah, lots of bikes and lots of tractors. There are lots of tractors.
Well, I've been to the Orkney Islands. I had a wonderful adventure in Orkney. Yeah. Anyway, we did all this. Meanwhile, there's this woman who I eventually married. And in those days, I'm talking about 1962, there was this idea of self-sufficiency. John Seymour wrote a book called Self-Sufficiency. It was land for the people, back to the land. You probably don't, it's funny talking to you, not knowing about these things. There was a hit television program called The Good Life.
Yes, I do know The Good Life.
You know about that? Well, that comes from that period where this middle-class couple decided to do the self-sufficiency in a middle-class area, you know.
Right.
Well, that was all on the back of this general cultural idea of self-sufficiency, getting back to the land. Well, Mary and I were both working in London at that time, and we said, no way are we going to bring up children in London, because she passionately wanted children. I think that was all she wanted me for, actually. And we're going to get out. So what I did, I just hitchhiked west, looking for somewhere to live. And we went as far as Gloucestershire, in the West Country. There was an old cottage there nobody wanted, and they were asking £1,000 for it. Nobody wanted old cottages. This is long before people were having second homes, that fashion for second homes. It needed a lot of work done to it, but it had nearly a quarter of an acre of land. And we offered them £800 and bought it outright.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
And then, of course, we got to work on it. It was one funny incident that, the conveyancing took ages.
Yeah.
And I knew it needed a lot of work done. And so I thought, well, sod it, never mind if we own it yet. I went along there and started making holes in the wall. And the vendor's solicitor turned up. But he saw the funny side of it. And we got that and we lived there. And in order to get quick money, I walked into the local factory and said, I'm a tool maker. And they said, come in.
Brilliant.
And I wasn't there long because I knew I didn't want to work in a factory. What I wanted was to become a potter.
Oh, wow.
I'd had that ambition ever since I was 16-year-old, to become a potter.
How come at 16 did you see a potter?
Well, television in those days was a new thing. And between the programs and when they weren't broadcasting, they would have what's called interludes. And it was a repetitive thing. And one of the things was a man throwing.
Oh, wow, throwing a pot.
And I was familiar with that because in my work, you do work on a lathe and do rotary work.
Right, okay, yeah.
And this is just rotary work upwards.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'd really love to do that. And then, so I enrolled, as a teenager, I enrolled for an evening class in the local art college, which cost me almost nothing, and learnt to make pots. And so then I said, eventually I would like to become a craft potter. So we moved into this cottage and I got a quick job for a bit of money. But I wrote a novel.
Oh, cool.
About factory life. And I don't know, do you know Kafka? Do you know Kafka's work?
Yeah.
Kafka's The Trial.
Yeah.
Influenced me hugely.
Oh, wow.
I read lots of literature. And Kafka's Trial really grabbed me. So I wrote a novel about a character in a factory.
What's it called?
It's called Smallcreep's Day. And it was a bestseller.
Wow, really?
It's been translated.
Small what day?
Smallcreep's Day. It's called
Smallcreep's Day. Wow, I'm going to read that.
You have to write all these things down.
Yeah, I'll definitely read that.
And there was a program every Sunday on Radio 4, which was called The Home Service, called The Critics. And it got reviewed on the Critics. And that was, the seal of success.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it's now, Wikipedia names it a cult book, which is a way of damning it with faint praise. If you call something a cult book, with the money I got from that, I did what I wanted, was set up a pottery.
Oh, amazing.
And I became a full-time craft potter for 20 years because handmade pottery was fashionable at that time. And there for a period, there was a craft potter in every village, you know, and it was the thing to go visit the pottery when you're on holiday and buy a little blue jug. And I did really well as a craft potter.
God, that's such an amazing thing to have managed to do.
I was on the crest of the general cultural wave. I did it at the right time, in other words, you know.
Yeah.
And that was great.
And you stayed in Gloucester, or did you? Is that when you started to move?
In Gloucestershire, yeah. At the end of a dead-end lane in the middle of fields. It was.
And were you growing food and stuff as well?
Yes, as much of our food as we could. Baking our own bread. We had a septic tank. We weren't on the general sewage. And our children grew up there amongst all the sheep, and they could wander about in the fields. You know.
How many children did you have?
We had 4 children in 5 years.
Wow. And
then we decided perhaps we ought to stop.
Yes.
But the thing was, they were all of an age, and they were all mates. You know, they were like permanent party. And we kept goats and cats. So the kittens were part of the family, and the kids, goat kids, became imprinted on our children and regarded themselves as part of the family.
Oh, that's so cool.
And when the 4 children went running up the lane, the kids would go running after them. You know, they wouldn't separate from the children. And children used to teach them tricks and a whale of a time. And our children had a wonderful childhood. And they went to local schools, so they weren't socially deprived at all, you know. At one point, the local secondary school had our kids from top to bottom.
Oh, wow. All the way through.
Yeah, notorious Brown family. And that was good. That was a good life.
And when did you move? Where did you go after that? What happened after that?
Well, when the children, one by one, the children left home to go to university. And when it was just me and the wife, it didn't work anymore. So I left. And where did I go? Then I went to Bristol. And then this is when the Glastonbury thing starts. From Bristol, I went to Glastonbury. I'm just trying to think where I first went, because there's a sculptor, a goddess, a female goddess sculptor called, God, can't believe I've forgotten her name. I haven't forgotten her name. And I became her technician, making her armatures and her moulds and things like that.
Oh, wow.
And she lived in an old chapel in Wookey Hole.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I moved there, and then what happened? Anyway, from there I went to Glastonbury, but I worked for 10 years for Philippa Bowers. Her stuff's on the web as well.
Okay, Philippa Bowers. I'll look her up.
And what happened there? Yes, then Philippa decided to sell the old chapel and move to Cornwall, because Cornwall was where they always wanted to be. You know? So then I had to move, and then I went to a small holding, which was actually an old coal mine, because there is such a thing as a Bristol coalfield, which is, you know, in ancient times. And this was an abandoned coal mine that this woman had taken over as a small holding, and I lived there for a bit. All sorts of other things happened in between.
When did you start getting drawn? Like, were you always into history throughout all of that, or was?
Well, the history thing came, yes, because I was coming here throughout that period. That happened at the pottery. I was at the pottery, and there was a lot of people were sort of interested in it as a pottery, because I dug my own clay and I fired with wood. But it so happened that there was a beautiful seam of clay in the garden, so I used to dig the clay and use that, refine that. And this chap called Comfrey used to come because he was interested in doing pottery himself, and he said, you ought to go to this place called Kentwell. So when I had finally left there, I did come to Kentwell, and I felt I'd come home in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, the reason was that I don't know if you know about pottery, but the pottery movement in this country started at the end of the Second World War, or before that. It was started by a fellow called Bernard Leach, who had studied in Japan and came back to Britain after the First World War, because all the local potteries had closed down, because all the apprentices had gone off to the First World War and not come back.
Ah, okay.
So then the only pottery there was then was what people called China, made in Stoke-on-Trent, you see.
Right.
All the local village folk potteries closed down. And Bernard Leach came along and said, this is nonsense, and started his own pottery at St Ives in Cornwall. And then wrote a book called The Potter's Book, and started a whole movement to revive pottery. But his aesthetic was Japanese, which is a very austere aesthetic, because in Japan, ceramics is regarded as just as important and significant an art form as painting and music is here. And he had that aesthetic, very beautiful, very nice.
Yeah,
but I was more interested in English historical pottery. And one of the traditions was a 17th century tradition of slipware goods called it'll come to me in a minute, a particular tradition of beer mugs and utensils, which had written on them puritanical slogans like "Sin no more," and "Fear thy God," and it was called Metropolitan ware.
Okay.
And I modelled my work on Metropolitan ware, except I didn't put slogans like that on. I put slogans like "Give your vicar good strong liquor," and my favourite one was "Better an idle fool than a busy one." A real ale only, because that was the time when real ale suddenly appeared.
Brilliant.
Real ale. And everything in the English tradition were humorous and bawdy things, like there were frog mugs. Regional frog mugs are real collector's items. And I revived the frog mug and made frog mugs. And slogans on the outside like "Grip the cup," something, "When you sup, do grip the cup." What was it? "Catch hold of the handle of this cup." This was in dialect, like "Catch hold of the handle of this cup. Be sure as you don't drop them, for you will caught a holy shot when you get to the bottom." That's frog mugs. I made hundreds and hundreds of them with different slogans. "Real ale for the pregnant male" was one. They keep turning up with slogans on that I've completely forgotten that I put on things. And I actually bought one of my own pots recently, because they fetch high prices now, you see.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And there was a lot of Kentwellies collect them.
Oh, do they?
And Dawn.
And are they actually frog shaped? What do the frog mugs look?
There's a frog in them.
There's a frog. Oh, I know the ones. I know what you're talking about. Oh, yeah, frog in the bottom.
Is it Dawn's husband?
Yeah.
Is it
Ant.
Ant.
Yeah.
He's looking after her collection. She has a huge collection of my work.
Wow.
And it fetches good prices on, like this mug I saw illustrated on eBay. That I thought, I wouldn't mind that. But they were asking 65 quid for it. and it was on there for some time, and then he halved the price. So I sent off and got it. I often wonder if he knew he was sending it to Maker.
Oh, that's amazing. No, well,
and it's a big beer mug, pint mug, that says Real Ale, the Revolutionary Ferment. And so I thought, right, I'll have that up on my shelf. And another thing was puzzle jugs. You ever heard of a puzzle jug?
What do they do?
They're beautiful things, the drinking cups, but they're perforated all the way around, so that if you try and drink out of them, you spill it all down yourself. But if you know how, there's a way to drink out of them.
Oh, wow.
and you hand it to somebody and challenge them, and then they get it all down them.
That's brilliant.
And they used to, pubs used to buy them and have them in the pub for people to knock about with, and they fetch high prices now, my puzzle jug. And anyway, the upshot of that was that a member of the Sealed Knot, you've heard of the Sealed Knot, haven't you?
Yeah.
Possibly the biggest reenactment group, about 2,000 members or something. They came along and they liked the look of the Metropolitan wear type. So I gave them a whole box to take to a muster. And they brought the box back empty. And so I gave them another full box, and they brought that back empty, paid me the money. I thought I really ought to join this organisation. So I joined the Sealed Knot and made the costume. And then Comfrey, who visited my pottery, told me about Kentwell. And I came to Kentwell and been coming since.
It's just so magical, isn't it? It's the only one that we do it in first person. Is that right? I think we're the only one that do it in first person, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, we do it properly.
Yeah.
Very high standards of costume.
Yeah. And
also, I like the fact there's a specific year and you study the politics of that year. And
1535 is one of my favourite years, actually. I feel like this is a really interesting one.
Well, it's the beginning of Henry knocking the monasteries about.
Yeah, this and the Armada years are always my favourites.
We've done the Armada 3 times. Anna and I got a bit fed up with that. So the last time, 1588, was done, we concentrated on Roanoke, which was the first English settlement in America.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, okay.
And we had all sorts of things brought back from the new lands of America, like tomatoes and potatoes and tobacco. I had a long Native American smoking pipe, and you demonstrate drinking smoke in the Great Hall.
That's good.
And telling the children that it was really good for you to smoke, and they'd say, "No, it's not. It's bad for you."
They thought it was good for asthma, though, didn't they? Wasn't it?
Yeah, because it cleared out your throat.
Yeah. And I remember you doing the dentistry with Solomon, doing the dentist station.
No, we extract teeth by gunpowder.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's
shooting
right,
out the musket.
Yeah, that's right. We did that in midsummer. And all sorts of adventures we've had. We were apothecary with leeches, because I had leeches then.
Yeah, you did. I remember that.
We had leeches, apothecary, and Janet, who was, she don't come to Kentwell now. She was my assistant, and she got from a butcher a whole length of pig's gut and cut it up to be condoms for the men.
She was great fun. I loved Janet.
You remember? Do you remember Janet? Yeah.
Yeah. It's Jodie and my Jack.
Oh.
Yeah. Been interviewing him all this time.
Sorry, I didn't know there was a great interview. The most wisest fellow in all of Christendom.
Isn't it?
Yeah, that was fun that year.
And then you met everyone here in the Melfords and started doing the Melfords and the
that was must be 25 years ago we started Melfords, because I thought and someone else thought there ought to be a drama group, which is part of Melfords, because I've been in the Sealed Knot, and the Sealed Knot have Commedia dell'arte. Do you know Commedia?
Yeah, I didn't know that they had that.
That's contemporary with their period, which is 17th century.
Right, okay.
So there was a Commedia group, which is enormous fun,
Yeah.
And so I said we ought to have a drama group. belonging to part of Cantwell. But we didn't want to call it Cantwell Players.
Mm.
We didn't want it to be that closely associated. So we called it Milford, his company.
Mm.
We had a wonderful charter of our license, wonderful license. One of the members did calligraphy, it's beautiful. But we kept it in a cardboard tube. And the trouble is, you put something in a cardboard tube, it expands and then you can't see it.
Oh.
And at some point, that cardboard tube got thrown out as just being a cardboard tube. Oh. And I really, really regret that because it was a lovely document.
Oh, that's true. You do have the best costumes. Your props and costumes are always brilliant. Who does all of them?
We all do a bit. We all do a bit, yeah.
We all do it.
Well, the mummers in reality should all be in raggedy coats, but there seem to be fewer and fewer of raggedy coats.
Yeah, I've still got mine. Do you remember Penny? This was Penny's cloak, the one that I wear.
Oh, right. Oh,
yeah. Because I used to work in the dairy and I used to watch the players perform.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember seeing Penny with her long grey hair wearing this cloak. Oh. And I was just like, I want to be like her when I grow up. And I completely admired her and I really wanted to be a player. Oh. And then I finally, after saying to Patrick, I'll do anything other than the dairy and having 2 years as a washerwoman as penance, I finally got to be a player.
I've got a torch in my tent. I usually carry it. And I haven't got it tonight. That's a bloody nuisance.
Yeah, we probably need to stop soon anyway because it's going to be very long. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Sorry about rambling.
Oh no, that was great. It was good. There was an hour. That's a lovely chat. I like to hear. It's just so nice to hear your story because I've always enjoyed watching you do the things that you do, but I didn't know how you came to it or how Glastonbury minded you were. It's nice to know what your story is.
I'm still in touch with some Glastonbury people. Because my closest friends were Glastonbury, but then I had to leave,
Yeah. And what about the alchemist stuff? So is it just that you always go and research these things and you just go on a deep dive into it? Is that what happens?
Well, with alchemy, yeah. I heavily researched it. But I think alchemy's got everything. It's got real science, but it's got myth and magic. And swindling.
Yeah.
There's a writer contemporary with Shakespeare whose name will come to me.
Ben Jonson?
Yeah, I think so. He wrote a play called The Alchemist.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Ben
do you
Jonson.
Know The Alchemist?
Yes, I do.
And it's a wonderful play about some swindling alchemists. Well, alchemists became notorious for swindlers. For when we were alchemists here, we said, "Do you have any gold, sir? Have any gold? If you give us some gold, we'll multiply it, return it to you 20-fold." That's how we get gold. See?
It's so good.
It's a bit like this money. What's this money?
Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh well, thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. I'm going to stop that now.
Well, I do have a list at home of all the things that I've done.
Yeah.
I just can't bring them to mind just like that.
Yeah.
Well, not made me write them all down.
That's really good. I'm glad someone has made you do it because that needed to be done.
And I've come to the end now. See, I thought I would like to do this event, but I couldn't think of anything to do.
Yeah.
And then Lettuce comes along with trumpet making.
Wow! Yeah. Yes. I didn't realise it was her idea, was it?
Oh, it's her idea.
Oh, that's amazing.
And she's the one who does it. I don't do it.
That's really good.
I'm just the figurehead.
Yeah. And how do you get the tools? So you just are able to fashion tools, I guess, or like.
Well, for that, she came to my place, and I've got tons of tools.
Yeah.
And she'd worked with. You probably know she'd been about two weeks at Tom's place.
Yeah.
And he's got a marvellous workshop, and she's made tools in that workshop, and and done research, and then she came to my place and
how old is Lettuce?
Did a bit there.
How old is she?
Sorry?
How old is she?
She's only 20.
Wow.
She's...
Oh, you're producing incredible next generation geniuses. That's great.
Well, she's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
But tonight I went past and she was horizontal on the table because she's got a bad back or something.
Oh, bless her.
But
do your children come? Have your children ever done this? No, I didn't think so.
No. No, none of them do anything like reenactment.
No. And do you have lots of grandchildren?
Yeah, 8, I imagine,
Blimey.
I believe. But none of them are interested. They're all making their way in the world, you know.
Yeah. Oh. Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for doing that. But that was this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. What an incredible chat that was. I just love talking to Mad Jack. I could do it forever. I can't get used to the fact his name's Peter. That's just blown my mind. But I am going to be getting a copy of his book, Smallcreep's Day, which actually Mike Rutherford from Genesis wrote an album or a song. I'm not sure whether it was an album or a song, but using that title. So he really is a famous dude. And it's just, I just love when you don't know someone very well and you think they're amazing, but you then find out just how far-reaching the ripples of their amazingness have gone. And I know that I didn't even scratch the surface in that conversation. After having that chat, I had people go, oh, did he tell you about the submarine? He had something to do with a submarine, I think it was something to do with spy, like, espionage, and I don't know, all sorts of other things that people were like, oh, did he mention this? Did he mention that? I'm like, no. So didn't scratch the surface. He's done many, many things and is a fascinating fellow. We should all aspire to be like this. So because it wasn't meant to be a proper full-blown podcast, I didn't have a chance to ask him for a Chaos Crusade. And I would love to know what he would suggest for a Chaos Crusade. So I will endeavour to reach out to him. I don't think he's on social media. I've never seen him on social media or anything. But there are people who are in contact with him. Maybe one of you lovely listeners, if you are in contact with him, would you ask him for a Chaos Crusade that we can then add to the show? For those of you who don't know what a Chaos Crusade is, it's a thing that we can do for the next week that just breaks the matrix, that just, because we're entering an Aquarius age, which I'm fully aware is very Glastonbury thinking. The idea is that Pluto has entered Aquarius and will be in Aquarius the next 20 years. And it's a slow moving planet that takes 240 years to get back round to the same spot. And so each 20 years are kind of washed with whatever sign it's in. We've just been in Capricorn for 20 years, which is very authoritarian, traditional, very institutional and patriarchal. And we're now entering into Aquarius, which is ideas and madness and mayhem and innovation and epiphany and evolution. So hopefully really exciting times ahead. But one of the things that I think is really important, and this is like not in so much of a Glastonbury thinking way, this is in a more practical way, that because we are facing huge changes, wherever you are on the scale of how severe climate change and politics and whatever, how severe you think that direction is that we're heading in, we need to learn increasingly how to relax with change. And that needs to be something that we actually practice like a muscle. And a way I am endeavouring to do that is to keep changing the things that I do, like not always using the same toilet cubicle, taking different ways to walk to work. I wore a red nose for a week for the first Chaos Crusade for this podcast. So it's just doing things differently that breaks the matrix and gets you to just look at the world slightly differently and mix things up a bit. So I would love to know what Mad Jack's Chaos Crusade suggestion would be. But off the back of the conversation with him, the one I would suggest for this week, which I will use in the meantime, is I think we should all go off and research something and learn about something that we've always been interested in but haven't ever put the time aside to do it. So just this week, we don't have to get too lost in it. It's just a week's worth of investigation, but just something that you've always been interested in, that you would like to know how it's done, like how something's made, or like a moment in history that you've always been interested in, or a country you've always been interested in, just something, and just go on a deep dive to investigate it. Because that feels like that's what Jack does, is he's so interested and curious about life that I want to embrace that this week and go on curiosity crusade, where we explore something, like go and explore something. And I'd love to know what subjects you do go and explore and things that you learn. It'd be really nice to hear. Please do share and also comment on the podcast. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Huge love to you all, and I'll see you again next week. See thee anon.